before I think it was like static insight, right? And we were able
Yeah.
to analyze all of those different, moments in time that we'd go in and we'd look at, or we'd create a group on, or we'd go and do a one-to-one interview, or all of the techniques that are available. And now it's more kind of living intelligence, right? People are living and we're gaining intelligence and data all the time. So the wealth and the amount of data that we've got is in abundance. So it's actually being able to translate that in a more effective way um, to bigger experiences and be able to create more with it.
Welcome, Rach, to this beautiful conversation. And thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
your time.
It's good to
Yes,
see
for
you.
sure. Yes, it is really good to see you. I really wanted to have this conversation because I've been lucky enough to work with you, and I know how professional and how passionate you are about consumer centricity, about design in general. And I wanted to kind of take the opportunity to dive into the origins of Rachel, focusing
Wow. How
her
long we got?
passion. Yeah, right. Focusing your passion into design. What what was your first intuition or curiosity in your life, looking back, saying, okay, this drove me to this part of the of my professional life? What was it that took you to design?
Wow, I mean, it was a long time ago now. But actually, I think I got into design for the same reason that I'm still passionate about it today, which is, changing things for the better, making people's lives easier, making things more accessible, making things more simpler. Back in the day, I got into kind of physical product design.
Yeah.
I was actually designing like actual products. And then over the years, I've translated, as the industry has done, into, digital and now obviously into AI. But I've always had a real passion for consumers, for understanding people, understanding what makes them tick, actually observing what they do, which is sometimes very different from what they say they do, which is really interesting because, we're all human. And I think that it's always, you're always learning something. There's a curiosity around what people are thinking, how they're feeling. And as we evolve as humans, everything around us needs to change. And I just wanted to be part of that, I think.
Yeah. And you started working with physical products, which of course it must be real fun. And then you switched to digital
Yeah.
products. What was there's a lot of similar things, right, in the process of designs between one and the other. But what are the difference? What do you remember as a big difference from physical products to digital products?
So I remember quite distinctly that, there was always the saying form over function. And,
Mm.
and when I got into designing products, if you think back to kind of, phones, because I used to also work for Samsung and, we used to design phones. And it was always like, what kind of consumer segmentation would like more of a sporty phone or more of a fashion phone? Or so we were always looking at the kind of, what it would look like. And I think that the change was really, as digital, as the internet exploded, as we, had, the big players come in, social media, all of that, there was a huge transition to it wasn't just the form of what we were designing, but also more of the interaction and the usage of it. And I think that kind of was a huge breakthrough. And that's the transition I had from designing something that looked beautiful and made people happy to buy and to use and be affiliated with that brand to the same things, but you could do more of it. It could actually change the way that you worked, the way that you socialized, the way that you interacted with your banking, with different, well, all experiences, your shopping, everything. So, I think that for me, it was really exciting because it was going into being able to affect so many more things than just the actual form itself, but actually what you
Yeah.
do with it in this world.
Oh, that's so interesting. And also, you were mentioning very often, in order to design something that is functional and that it
Yeah.
serves a purpose and that it can actually be useful for people, you need to understand how those users, how those people actually think and behave. And you mentioned something that very often we say that we want one thing or we say that we behave in one way,
Yeah.
but we don't, and we're not even aware of our behavior. How did you get good at observing or knowing what the user actually needs in comparison to what they say they need?
Yeah, I mean it's I think to be honest, it's a lot of ethnographic research. I mean, I'm very well traveled. I've been to every corner of the world doing research in everything possible in my career, from, how people drank out straws to how people use their consumer devices to how people use medical equipment in surgery. Like I've kind of gone through every single sector and done that, really in-depth observational research. And it's quite interesting because I think as things have moved on, actually, that research was quite transactional because it was kind of
Mhm.
observing a moment in time, right? So we would see what people were doing, and they would also explain to us why they were doing it like that in that moment. And just with observation, you can see that some things kind of they thought they were doing something, and we all do things. Sometimes I drive home and kind of get there and not really realized how I got there. We're so programmed to do things
Yeah,
naturally. And but I think that today, because of the way that the today's generation and today's world is, everything, like everyone's like attention span's really short. Everyone
yeah,
is changing what they're doing from hour to hour, minute by minute. So research actually needs to kind of be a bit more adaptive, in terms of a bit more fluid, I suppose, and more of like an ecosystem. I think what I mean by that is we now have the data to be able to go in to look at real-time behavior minute by minute. And even with some of our experiences, with like, Disney, we are following our consumers, being able to track them minute by minute, and then overlaying the kind of contextual, qualitative research of the moment that they're in to be able to personalize things better. And so I think, people have moved on, things are quicker, we need to adapt to how people are behaving. And that's changed because of all the access of technology and things that we have today that, I think is very, very different from, decades ago.
observation of behavior has always been a tricky thing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's we humans observing us, and
Yeah.
it's a mess sometimes. But it does seem like in the past few years we have collected more data than ever, and that the role of the researcher, changed from some more, I don't want to say human techniques to more data-centric techniques or more
Yeah.
data analytic techniques. Have you seen a shift in the past few years on that specific skill of the researcher to be able to analyze data in ways that maybe before it was not on the field?
Absolutely. I think there's the main thing I think has been, it's like you said before, I think it was like static insight, right? And we were able
Yeah,
to analyze all of those different, moments in time that we'd go in and we'd look at, or we'd create a group on, or we'd go and do a one-to-one interview, or all of the techniques that are available. And now it's more kind of living intelligence, right? People are living and we're gaining intelligence and data all the time. So the wealth and the amount of data that we've got is in abundance. So it's actually being able to translate that in a more effective way, to bigger experiences and be able to create more with it. So where before we could create experiences that I suppose led themselves to a subset of people, now it's very much on a one-to-one level, almost. I don't think we're quite there yet. We're not quite
yeah,
there
yeah.
yet, but I think we're getting
Mhm.
there, that it's the personalization is just getting more and more focused because of the data that we're getting and the amount of how quickly we can get that data. So yeah, I think the role of the researcher does need to be more analytical. You need to understand data, and we also need to use the tools that we have available today that we didn't have, even 18 months ago, to help
Yeah,
us to
exactly.
analyze and get to a point where we could do something with it.
And that is crazy though, because I think so much of the goal of design in general is to tailor an experience for a particular audience. And before we, as you were saying, maybe you design for as broad as you as the technology allowed you to, and then you started
Mm.
segmenting it a little bit to this group of people. But it seems like personalization will become a unity of one person, and an experience will be tailored so much to that one person. That becomes a big systemic challenge for a designer to be able to design all the possible types of experiences, as many as users there as users you have. How how is that changing the mindset of a designer? How is that changing the skill
Yeah.
set of a designer
Yeah.
today?
Um, I think that's actually one of the most challenging things, right? And I think that a designer's role is less now about fixing kind of moments of friction. So before we have our consumer journeys and we looked at where all the friction points were and we looked to see how we can adapt them, how we can change them. I think now it's actually also kind of designing for emotion. So with all the intelligence and the data and everything that we've got, we're now able to be a bit more predictable. So we can
Yeah,
predict the needs of our customers and our consumers. But by doing that, we can also teach the system of how to be more empathetic in the way they
there you
suggest
go.
something, or the way that they're helping with something, or what they're delivering at that time. So I think it's a designers are a bit more creative in terms of curating a emotive experience, but the mindset
Mm,
also has to be super ethical, right? Because of, what we're dealing with AI. So it's teaching that emotion. I think there's that kind of layer, I think that's new now that we as designers are having to kind of think about. So
that is
I think
so
it's
interesting.
yeah, I think it's less about kind of doing those interfaces and more about kind of what's the decision frameworks that
There
we
you
have
go.
to put in place. And those decision frameworks that need to be underpinned by how the customer's going to feel when they're using
Yeah,
it or interacting
that
with
is
it.
so interesting because we've always talked about the emotion and how we
Yeah.
want to make the user feel, but very often the technology was not there, or you had to go through a million different technical aspects to get to that part. And it feels like now technology is allowing us to, okay, we can solve everything else, and you need to focus on how you really want to make the user feel. Does that give you hope for the future,
I
or
think it
does that
does.
excite you?
I think it does if it's done in the right way.
Right?
Because I think that, we're in a world where we're surfaced with various things now, and it could be, oh, you've bought this, so probably you might like this, or you've listened to this and you probably want this song or watch this movie next. But actually, when we start to hyper personalize and also put that emotive kind of layer on,
Yeah.
you've then got actually this is the movie that we think that you might want to watch because of the emotional state that you want to get into next,
Mm.
or this is the song that we think you want to listen to based on how we think you feel now. So yeah, that I mean that just kind of blows my mind that we can kind of
Yeah.
be in a world where we can have specific experiences that are tailored to kind of how we feel. Yeah, I mean it's quite scary as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go because right, it gives, with all the technology, and not trying to sound a cliche, but with big responsibility,
Mm,
with big power comes big responsibility, and it feels like as designers we have, this power of persuading or suggesting or driving behavior in a way.
mm.
What are the, and I think as you were mentioning, I think the ethical part or the
Yes.
ethical responsibility is bigger than ever. What do you hold yourself to as an ethical designer? What do you hold your team to in this ethical pursuit of design?
Yeah, I mean, like ethics comes from lots of different places and realms, right? Whether that's designing for, different cultures or, different, I mean, everyone's different, right? So I think the ethical
Yeah,
piece is also around like logic. So I think that there are kind of regulations, there's rules, there's things that we need to be mindful of. And of course, we have an abundance of different, accessibility standards and various other things that we need to adhere to as designers, and also researchers. But I think a lot of it is how we apply the logic. So I think you need to I want to say there's a, there's a specific logic, which I suppose is around how we do the right thing. But I think there's also that empathy logic as well that comes from
Yeah.
experience of designing various things, services, products over time that you need to then apply. So I think some of it
Yeah.
can be taught and some of it is self-taught in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
Mm.
does come with a lot of responsibility. And I think, I mean, we as, the team of designers we have here, some of them are actually have come from doing masters in ethics as well, because it's so
Yeah.
important that that is something that needs to be in everything that we consider, everything that we design.
It does sounds like the skills of the designer have changed in the past at
Yeah,
least, well, 3 years for sure, but in the past 10 years, it has changed so
totally.
much. Right now, what do you, maybe 10 years ago, you were looking for a particular skill or technical
Mm.
skill in a senior designer. Right now, what do you prioritize when you are building your team or even when for yourself growing as a professional? What type of skills do you
Mm.
prioritize?
So we've mentioned it before, but I think understanding data is really
Yeah,
key. I mean, I think there is a merge there between that kind of, understanding data, using it as intelligence to be able to inform how to design something. So I think having that kind of the data attributes are really important. But I think it's also open to change and being adaptable. I mean, every single day there is a new tool,
yeah,
something that can help us, something that can help automate what we were doing before. And so you need to be in the mindset of actually being open to that and actually taking those tools on board, learning them and applying them in the right way. So I think that the changes with openness and also through kind of data intelligence. I think they're the two big things. I mean, we've always wanted open-minded designers, but I think
sure.
it's not
Yeah,
just the design and how far we take something to, a specific direction or coming up with innovations or innovative thinking about how to apply to a journey or service or platform or whatever. But I think now it's the openness to utilize tools and be more kind of efficient and also be positive about utilizing those tools, because obviously there's a bit
yeah,
of negativity as well, right, in terms of,
yeah.
is that going to take away
Very cool.
some
Yeah,
of the experience and my job or what I've done before, but actually embracing it, I think, rather than
yeah.
seeing it as something that's a threat.
A lot of the work that designers do is not just crafting an experience based on a purpose, but also dealing with maybe the education side
Mhm.
of it from our clients, from other people who not
Absolutely.
necessarily have an understanding of the process or the goals from design. And a lot
Mhm.
of the effort and the energy that designers spend is on educating and walking through the process with our clients. How has that been in your experience? Can you share a little bit of both frustration and wisdom from that,
Wow.
that process?
I think I mean, they come in equal measure, right?
Yeah.
So I think frustration in the fact that I think as designers come with a vision and they always want to make it better as well. So within educating, you've got the pace of the client and then you've got the pace of the designer. And the designer wants to take something and make it amazing, but also at times there's frustration because they don't know when to stop within that
Mhm.
process as well. Keep going, make it better, make it simpler, doing all of this. And then you've got frustration of client who, you know, also is trying to get there quicker, essentially. But there are points where you need to stop and you need to learn and you need to take stock or maybe pivot, ask consumers, get that customer centricity. And I think some of the frustrations are that, oh, we'll design something and then we'll just ask a few people and see if they kind of like, think it's okay. Whereas we're very much, we design with the customer in mind. So, and we actually mean that. So, you've got frustrations because sometimes the clients want to just kind of get through the design piece quickly. You've got designers who are finessing things maybe a little too much at times. And so these two kind of paths have to kind of connect at some point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's always got to be this dialogue. But I think the dialogue actually comes from the point of view of the customer because no one can argue with what the customer wants. So I
Yeah.
always found that that was the kind of wisdom piece. That's the bit that kind of connects the two because the designer's creating something, the client might have a different vision or they're quite happy with that vision, but they don't necessarily want to spend time and money asking people. But actually, if you ask people, they can validate quicker and they
Yeah.
can, and we can minimize risk as we're designing something. So it wins all round. But that education piece, I think, the customer is maybe the glue or the bridge.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In this day and age where designers have become more into, as you were saying, into data,
Mm,
and maybe technology has become closer to designers, I think the relationship between developers and designers is more important than ever. Have
yes.
you have you seen what is your takeaway in that relationship, or designers trying to design in isolation or within a collaborative environment with developers? What is the takeaway on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some issues, right? I mean, I think when design isn't involved and it is this very much clear cut, right, I've designed something, there you go, just go build it. And there isn't a shared vision of what the design should be through the build stage is where I see a lot of issues. That's where there's been delivery issues. And then also it creates like other factors like time, redoing stuff, haven't used the right design system, not using the, you know, proper font and version of the design in Figma or whatever it might be. There's always those stumbling blocks if it's a complete handover. And I have seen that in a lot of instances. So I think that, with that comes learning. So, now when we're trying to scope work with any clients, we also encourage our clients to bring in some of our designers who have been involved from the beginning because they also understand the intent of the design, which I think is really important. That has to show even through the development of it. And I think that
Yeah,
actually developers are a bit more open to having designers be part of the process now as well, because they are seeing that they can actually do it quicker and do it once in some
yeah.
cases. So I have seen that it expedites the process and makes it better if everyone's kind of working together. I mean, it's not always easy, but it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's not easy because there's different languages and there's different goals
Yeah.
very often. But whenever we put that together, it becomes the best experience for the consumer at the
Mhm.
end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
Now we are at a pivotal moment where AI is certainly changing the velocity or the expectation of many of our clients, and there's this uh, sometimes this expectation that everything is going to be quick and that AI has the better response and everything else. You have worked in so many industries and you have seen industries change and reinvent and evolve. What do you see right now? What is the expectation with AI from the client, and what is your kind of the way you adopt AI in your design process, and how you recommend to adopt AI for your clients in this very pivotal moment of change and disruption?
So I think that there's still a uncertainty about what AI can actually do. And when I mean that, I mean the value it can bring.
Yeah.
So I think that with our clients, I'm talking from client perspective now, I think that there's still an uncertainty. There's a different pace. I mean, as Globers, we've been working with AI for a very long time, but I
Hmm.
don't, it's not a trend. It's not a trend that's going to come and go really quickly. This is here with us for many years to come. And I'm quite an optimist. I think that it's actually going to do good and make things a lot easier. And yeah, I see it very positively. I think one of the
Yeah.
things is that AI is really good at the moment, and I say at the moment, to optimize and to make certain moments within an experience or even in your operational day to day more efficient and better. But I think the big thing for automation at the moment, as kind of designers, is for it to help us. I think we need to help AI actually become more human. So look and
Mm,
feel more human and not replace humanity, if you see what I mean.
there you go.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the vein that we need to, or the message even that we need to get across. I think that AI is different depending on the audience of who you're speaking to in the clients. Whether you're speaking to the CTO or whether you're speaking to the CRO or the CMO, their version or their vision for what AI needs to be and what the value of it is different. So I think that we need to be able to communicate that value in terms of the way that they think that it's going to be better for the organization or for their teams or for the process in the project that we're working with. So there's I'm kind of going off a bit of a tangent here, but I do think that
Yeah.
there's a piece of personality that's kind of missing in an experience with AI that I think is important for designers to approach now. So,
Mm,
how you can actually provide the right feel, the right tone, the right emotion, but give it a personality in order to do this. I think it
there you
will
go.
make consumers more receptible to AI, which will then make brands understand that it is actually for good. Because,
Yeah.
again, AI can't be interchange for every single human interaction. And I think that, I was saying before that we're not just, we look at taking the friction. It's not just about taking friction out of experience. I think with AI, we might have to put in some friction to add some humanity
Mm,
to experience. So I think that whatever we do with it, the process of automation with AI, with our designers, it needs to be more considered and less kind of feeling manufactured, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Right now, a lot of our clients are constantly trying to see how to improve an
Mm,
experience or how to improve either for efficiency, optimization, return of investment, or trying to get
exactly.
more market share or whatever goal or metric they have. And a good way to optimize those KPIs is through customer centricity, right? And to really understand your consumer, your user, and working from there to improve your experience everywhere. You talked all the time with CEOs, with CMOs, with CTOs about how to create customer centricity culturally and for a particular product. If you had to create or give CEOs right now a couple of pieces of advice on how to start or how to unblock some of the issues on their organization that blocks this customer centricity, what would you say to them?
Well, I think one of the issues with the kind of customer centricity piece is that there's a lack of ownership of the customer a lot of the time I see in the organization.
Mm,
So in some organizations, it's technology, sometimes it's marketing, sometimes there's their own customer uh, team that's looking at it. But I don't think that it's literally spread across the whole organization. And I think that that's kind of a missed thing. I think that's a, blind spot or whatever we want to call it. Because I think to actually make meaningful change across the organization, you have to identify with the customer because the customer's buying your brand, and that customer insight needs to be embedded in the entire organization. So it's
mm,
almost shared ownership that's required across all of those different stakeholders and teams within a company, rather than it just kind of being owned by maybe one subset. And I think that encouraging that kind of shared knowledge of who the customer is and actually meeting those customers as well. I mean, the amount of times that I've been in projects with key stakeholders And I say, well, when's the last time you spoke to your customer? And they're like,
Never.
yeah, or I don't know. And so I've brought customers into very awkward, scenarios and situations because, I've had to get very senior people to listen to actually what the customer is saying because they're the ones who are building your brand and all of those things you talked about, efficiencies, margin, profit, that it all lands with the customer, it all lands with your brand. So introducing them to some of those basic things like here's your customer, listen to them is really important. And by doing that, it actually does create a bit of hype across an organization. So
Yeah,
people want to get involved and engage. So I think that's one of the things that I would definitely encourage to kind of, share that ownership.
that's so interesting, right? Just to get closer to
Mm,
human being at the end of the
yeah,
day and talk to them,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
right? Yeah. A lot of those interactions also have to be crafted and moderated. I believe that sometimes if you just get close to a customer without a plan in hand, that
Oh,
can
that would be a
often
disaster.
backfire, right?
Yeah, no, you need Globant for that.
There you go. It's like, you have to have a plan. You have to
Yes,
execute that plan, right?
yes.
Exactly. Now, looking more at the future, and you already mentioned that you're very positive on what the future will bring in terms of this adoption and integration with AI, how potentially AI will allow us to focus on more important things and allow us to do things that maybe often we don't have enough time to do or we don't have enough resources to do. AI kind of brings that. Can you talk a little bit more about how you wish the future will be, or how you hope it will be, or how you see the trends of behaviors in both clients and in both designers?
Wow, it's a big question. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so my future vision for AI. So I would really hope that AI enables us, and you mentioned the word time, and I think that's the big one. Um, as humans, we, want to try and make more money or we want to try and do that, but we can never make more time, right? And I think as designers, having more time can also help us to kind of have a bit more autonomy and more innovation and that kind of reflection of what we're doing to make things better. So if we can utilize AI in a way that can help us, even start here rather than start here, I think that then we can be more creative in the solutions and experiences and everything that we create and deliver at the end of the day. I think that it is making things more optimized and more efficient. I think it also challenges some of the stuff that we know as well, which I think is really good for us as designers because, you know, you can utilize all these tools and it kind of gives you a bit of a baseline, but it also and then encourages you to come up with something different because you're almost challenging AI and what it's producing so that you can, as a human, actually overlay some of the things that you've learned or you've experienced or that your customers need on top of that and enhance it, which at the moment, we're trying to train, AI through that kind of ethical mindset and, emotive track, but it's not quite there yet. So I think it will give designers that. Um, with clients, I think it's the possibilities are endless. But I think the challenge is trying to ensure that there is intrinsic value that is created by AI. And also, we don't utilize it or develop something in a way that feels very manufactured and inhuman, that someone doesn't want to actually use it and therefore is not having that human connection with the brand. So I think there's a balance, right? That needs to be
Yeah.
played in terms of kind of how we use AI, how we use it effectively, and where where the intrinsic value is on what we deliver.
That is so wonderful, so spot on. Thank you so much, Rach. And given the fact that we have a wonderful professional designer in front of us, we're going to ask you a
I'm
creative
worried.
question
Good.
or a task, a creative task. we were talking about the future, right, of AI and how we met the future of our industry of AI playing a part and the future of design in general. And we want to see if you can consolidate that or simplify it in a drawing or a word or a symbol of
Okay.
something that
Wow.
represents what you think it's gonna come, right?
Okay, with a Sharpie and an A4 piece of paper.
With a sharp-
Let's go.
it's
Okay.
it's time to show your skills. Right?
No, no pressure at all.
Not at all, don't worry. We can always pass it through AI and make it better. Right?
Yes. I don't know. I don't think we're quite advanced to get this A4 piece of paper in it quite yet, but um,
Look at that concentration, my goodness.
I know I'm trying to work. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah, it
Pressure.
is.
Okay, you ready for this? Okay.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I am.
So,
Oh wow.
so
Yeah, walk us through
okay.
it.
Yeah, okay. So basically, I think what I've tried to do is create a balance because I think, we've just described that. So I think
Yeah,
it's, so this here is like our little consumer, our customer centricity. And also this is where sits that kind of making it human, not replacing humanity, create
there you
having that
go.
emotion and empathy, but having balanced with all of the data, all of our AI tools, agentic systems, um, everything that we have from a technology perspective. So it's really the balance between technology and human.
I love it. I love it so much.
I will
You know
send
what?
it you through the mail. We'll go
Yes,
old
please
fashioned.
do.
Yeah.
We'll frame it for sure. I do like the
Amazing.
concept of balance because I do think, and we've seen it so much, that very often we have a fixed mindset on whatever we do, it stays like
Yeah.
that. And it's so not true. It's a constant balancing of new things coming, new things think all things going, and a constant revision of
Yeah.
everything that we do. And I think it's beautiful that you put it that way because it's definitely not fixed, right?
No, and I think that with we talked about the future, and I think that even recently, in recent months, and in the last year, there's been a lot of change. And as humans, we intrinsically want to resist change.
Yeah.
So I think that it is something that that kind of growth mindset is something that we all need to work on, but I think fundamentally if we understand the shared purpose and the shared belief of what the change can provide and bring to the future and get behind that and share that, it will provide a little bit of trust in all of us about where AI can take us in the future.
That is so lovely. Rach, you are such a good professional, such a great designer, such a passionate, curious designer. I'm so
Thank you.
thankful
You
for you
too.
giving us this time, and it's been lovely,
Thank
really.
you. It's been a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
for sure. Yeah, for sure.